Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back or welcome to the Armchair Book and Wrestling Podcast. After a long hiatus for me. So as with the rest of since we recorded. Um, and so I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. See, that's how bad it's been. I almost forgot my own name. Joining me as my co-host is Justin from TNC Sports Talk. How you doing, Justin?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm excited. It's been a long time for me as well. So to be able to get back behind a camera, talking to you, sharing thoughts, ideas, breaking down things, I've been craving this. As a matter of fact, I've been pushing you to kind of get back
Yeah.
into this a little bit, with both of our
um,
busy schedules.
In fact, we were supposed to do this last week, but unfortunately, I caught just a little bit of the flu. I say a little bit. No, I couldn't speak three sentences without coughing, and so we couldn't do it last week. In fact, my voice, even right now, I don't know if you can tell, my voice is still kind of. But fortunately, I'm not coughing like the way I was before. But I, I do want to, of course, thank Justin for coming on. Thank him for really pushing because he's been after me like every week. Hey, you were going to record? Probably not. Hey, you're going to record? Probably not. But there was a lot of reasons why. I want to go into a little bit of those because this is the first show since right around Thanksgiving time that I've been able to record for Armchair Booking. And also to kind of put this in perspective, my other podcast, the Cubicle Chat, I think I've recorded two episodes. So it's not just this one that's been affected. But when I talk about everything that's been happening, hopefully, it kind of um, makes sense about everything that's been kind of keeping me from recording. Well, first, and this is almost a minor thing, back in December, um, one of our fur babies, one of our cats, passed away all of a sudden. I mean, it was, and that kind of hit it. We've had this cat for 11 years since he was a kitten. And so I was taking care of that. We actually had him cremated, um, but it really hit my wife really hard because he actually died in her arms. And that's actually the third pet we've had just this past year. And it's the same thing. They all three died unexpectedly right in my wife's arms. You know, um, and then about a week after that, my mother-in-law had a fall in her house. She got a hairline fracture in her right shoulder and a hairline fracture in her left hip. And so you can imagine, I mean, she's in a lot of pain. And since then, she's been in three different hospitals, and now she's in her third rehabilitation facility, trying to relearn how to walk, trying to relearn actually how to talk as well, and learning how to stand up. I mean, it's just been rough. She has not been home since all this happened, and so we've been trying to help out with that. My wife goes to see her about every other day whenever she can, um, along with everybody else, just making sure she's good. And then, of course, my employment situation, I'm still subbing right now, so being a substitute teacher. I've been getting a lot of jobs, for that, so that's during the day. So anytime I was recording during the day, well, I can't exactly do that. They kind of frown on that when I'm supposed to be substitute teaching. They really don't like people doing podcasts while they're at the school. They actually do talk about things like that. It's wild. Because there's been teachers who have been caught posting on social media, like in their classrooms, and they've gotten fired. Now, part of that is because of what they posted, but because they did it in the classroom, they kind of frown on that. And I actually got sick. I caught that aforementioned flu while I was subbing. That flu was so bad around this area. Um, one of the schools, actually a few of the schools, they actually shut down for a day or two. So I got all that going on, and so it's just managing to find the time to actually record because even during the evenings, I only have one evening guaranteed to be off right now. And even that, if something happens, well, even that's a guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
So,
compared to maybe what it was a year ago,
yeah,
I mean, it definitely has added up. But I mean, you also look at, the weather hasn't been on our side as of late. I mean, we
yeah,
are
even
just
today, this is ridiculous today.
like 2 inches of snow or something, 3 inches of snow just today. It's supposed to be like this on and off all week long, from my understanding.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, and I just actually reached out because it was actually last Tuesday. I heard from me and my wife was at T-Mobile. We're upgrading to our iPhones Plus, and then we got free watch bands, or not watch bands, but the Apple Watches to go with
Oh,
it.
okay, like that.
So, and the only difference is I've had them. It's just you just have to pay. Got them completely free, $20 per watch for taxes, and then you just had to pay add them to your phone as an actual line because I used to not
Right.
just sync it. So, but the guy was telling me, yeah, we're supposed to get anywhere between 10 to 14 inches next Thursday. And obviously now the weather's forecast has kind of mellowed out a little bit, but still, I was like wondering. I texted you last week. I was like, does WWE have alternative plans? Because they're supposed to come down to Cincinnati on the 24th before Elimination Chamber. And I was just like, do they have alternative plans if they get snowed out of a city or a town? And I've never actually seen an incident where WWE had to change locations, or at least it's been such a long time.
Um, honestly, I don't know. That's such something we could probably actually ask some of the wrestlers we know. But yeah, I'm looking on the forecast right now. Now, granted, I'm in Mount Orab. I'm about 30 miles east of Cincinnati.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's calling for snow Wednesday. And Thursday, it's a high of 21. So yeah, the cold temperatures, I mean, yeah, they're swinging back
Well,
around. I don't know what
and the
that
only reason I
groundhog
even
saw,
say
but
that, only reason I say any of that is because we had about what 6 to 7 inches of snow back at the beginning of January. That probably took
yep.
the entire city out of commission for about a solid week to 2 weeks. I remember school; they used up all the NIT days for
Whatever they call
school.
them.
They used it all up in a row. Uh, it was pretty bad. Like, I know my wife and my sister-in-law wasn't able to go to work for a few days after the fact, and I tell you that was not necessarily fun to deal with. Having everyone in the house for 4 or 5 days in a row, and
Right.
so this town kind of bounces back pretty slowly. Now they say that they're jumping ahead of the game, but like I live in an apartment complex, and anyone who lives in in the suburbs, they'll understand that your roads are kind of last to get hit, to get cleaned up. And so,
Uh-huh.
we didn't get our, parking lots cleared up for solid 3 to 4 days after the initial storm. So, wherever anyone's at around this weather forecast, be safe. But we wish everyone the best of luck. But yeah, I mean that also makes putting on a show pretty complicated as well.
And I live out where I live is actually pretty rural.
Yeah.
And so I live on a back road off a back road. And
Hmm.
there's other back roads beyond this back road. But yeah, we don't get hit with the plows. We might get hit with them, but we're like obviously low priority or
Yeah.
lower priority. I want to say extremely low. Um, but it also didn't help, a couple times when I shoveled my drive and I had to borrow a shovel because our snow shovel I cannot find it. Actually, I think it's actually buried in the snow in the backyard. My son and one of his former friends, they were trying to build a fort and somehow it involved a snow shovel. But it's actually buried under the snow somewhere in the backyard. So I was trying to use a regular shovel. Then one of my neighbors let me borrow his snow shovel. Shoveled the drive, was able to get the car out onto the drive to go to like Dollar General to get a couple things. That night, the plows came out, pushed the snow back on the driveway. I could not get out of the drive.
Mm.
The next day after, I was able to get out. So, uh, but we were able to get somebody to come out and actually plow our driveway to where they got all the excess snow and everything off of it. But yeah, so I don't know what their contingency plans. I would imagine they have something because even WWE, especially now that it's no longer VKM in charge, because safety was not on the forefront of his mind. I don't want to talk too much about him considering everything. There's still lawsuits going on about him, adding more and more people added to those. But I think the regime now, especially because it's owned by Endeavor,
Hmm.
and so they're going to be more safety conscious. They're going to not force people to travel out in these kind of blizzard kind of conditions. When I say blizzard, I mean
Yeah.
it's a like a blizzard right now because this morning I was recording this on a Sunday afternoon.
Like not even two
This
hours
morning,
into snow.
yeah, I
Right.
mean when I went to my church this morning because I play bass for the praise team. Got there at 8:30, and yeah, it was kind of raining, some sleet. but it wasn't extreme. We practiced for about an hour just to make sure we ran through the songs. I walked out in the lobby and looked out the door, and I'm like, what in the world happened here? Because I mean, it was just white outside,
Yeah.
and it was coming down hard. And there was like, I don't know. I mean, so that was just in an hour. We already had anywhere between half an inch to an inch of snow in just that hour,
Yeah.
and no telling when it actually started. So,
I
um,
was up with my son. He got up around 7:30. So I came out here, took care of a couple things in the living room, and looked outside the window, officially opened up the house. It was like maybe 8 o'clock. And it was like, all right, solid enough to where it's like, I wonder if it's going to stick or not. Well, not even 30 minutes later, you had a nice, good blanket of snow. And it wasn't like it looked
mhm,
like an actual blizzard. It's just constantly snowing. But I mean, and then I could also imagine out there, I don't know if you guys have good systems, but I got friends out in Falmouth, Pillington County, right out there in that area.
right.
They got no, they hardly have any sewage system, so they more were concerned about flooding than anything else.
We were already under a flood watch before the snow came and hit. So a lot of the water that was already standing, of course, is now frozen. People
Yeah,
actually have frozen ponds in their front yards now.
gosh.
Yeah. So,
So I do want to
but
ask you though.
anyway,
You did mention something about the name we do not speak, and there was a news article came out just after the Super Bowl because apparently the who attended with a bunch of friends, and
mhm,
a couple of the friends were high, relatable names, good names. Mark Calloway, for example, the AKA the Undertaker, and I guess the conversation led towards he he doesn't associate himself with whatever happened. Whatever happened, he go who takes care of business. But he's been a good mentor. Remember, who brought Mark when no one else thought highly of him into the industry,
right.
and he became a legacy. So I just maybe from your perspective, how hard it is if you have somebody who is going through a very tough time, to still keep yourself, on a respectable level with him as friendship, but not associate with the negativity that ties along to him.
I know for me, it'd be tough because I mean, it's not that you want to abandon the people who've been your friends and the people who stuck their neck out for you, which, VKM, I mean, he did stick his neck out for Mark Calloway,
Mm.
on probably on more than one occasion. But but at the same time, there's got to be a certain point where you say, I appreciate you for everything you did for me.
Yeah,
I can't support these heinous acts that you did. And it's not that you necessarily cut ties, but you can say, you know, our interactions, at least publicly, are going to have to be fewer than what they
yeah,
have been. Because you don't want to make it look like you're turning a blind eye to the action. I mean, now the trials haven't happened yet. That's another
yeah,
thing too. I mean, he is technically innocent before guilty, and that's the way the justice system works. That's the way it should work. They have to prove that he did all these things, but there's lawsuits. They're bringing other names in there. They're bringing in Brock Lesnar's name has finally been added. Michael Hayes has been added.
yeah.
They're adding Bruce Pritchard's name, and not saying that they were necessarily involved, but they were aware of things that were happening. Um, so I mean, it would be tough because I mean they were pretty close,
Yeah.
but that's
I
a
mean, it's tough
decision
for me as a
for
fan because whenever you, like I said, you think of WWE, you think of VKM, and you just happen,
yeah.
the success that he's had over the last 30 plus years for the industry.
He made wrestling what it is now. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't deny that.
But I
So
just thought that
anyway,
was interesting because we saw him out, like I said, the article out at the Super Bowl. There was a couple different events last year, like some boxing or UFC fights that they made attendance with, and I don't, I mean, I don't think of anything different from Mark Calloway than I do today. For me, one of the goats in the industry, who kind of stabilized no matter what he now. It's going to be, these unravelings of names continue to pile on, and I guess I question, can't I
Right.
don't know what I would do with myself if his name got brought up, but man.
Uh,
Anyways,
well, well, I want to cover some of the things that have happened since the last time I recorded. Last time I recorded a show, it was a Survivor Series preview.
okay.
Have not done a review show. That was the plan. Ended up not happening. Um, and since then, obviously, the Survivor Series happened. Christmas happened. New Year's happened. Then the Royal Rumble has happened.
Hmm.
I would have wanted to do a preview show, prediction show for the Rumble because the Rumble, especially, it's always a fun one to try to predict. I would not have guessed Jey Uso and Charlotte Flair. I would have guessed more Charlotte than Jey. Just
Hmm.
knowing Charlotte was going to come back in. But when she came in and the number she did, I don't remember, was it 27, 28? As soon as I saw her coming in, I'm like, Charlotte's winning. Because to be honest with you, by that point, seeing all the ones who were already out,
And
eliminated,
she just announced her challenger as Tiffany on
she
Friday Night
did.
SmackDown. Jay's
Yep.
facing Gunther, which is suitable for me. I gotta be honest with you. The Royal Rumble match itself, because I got afterwards, people hated it. They didn't like the reasoning of Jey Uso for whatever reason, but yet again, people bashed Charlotte for so long. Now, look, listen, I think Charlotte is the staple of the women's wrestling in the
Hmm.
WWE at least. And so I think she needs to have her own little record that sets away from her father, from her family's history. And I think, her time in the ring is so limited. I don't know how much more she is going to do. She's getting older. Her body's definitely taking a toll on
And
her with the
she's
injuries,
injury prone. Yeah.
but she still looks like one of the greatest shapes of her life. Like
Oh, she
it's
does.
crazy.
Well, she's a very legitimate. She's a collegiate level athlete. She played volleyball at UNC Asheville.
Mm-hmm.
She's a legit Division 1 collegiate athlete,
Yeah.
and and she was a personal trainer. She knows how to keep herself in shape. But once you get injured,
Mm-hmm.
like a serious enough injury that first time, you're now prone to have the recurring injuries.
I mean, that knee
Um,
injury last year really almost scared her career. I thought she
yeah,
even felt that she was almost done. So just to be able to return is a success. And if you're going to put the title on it, I say all for it. I don't know. Yeah, you could argue, for me, the women's Royal Rumble was much better put together than the men's, in my opinion. I guess it all played out smoothly, right? But I say take advantage of this, and like I said, I just don't know how much time she has left, and so you make every moment count towards her, and hopefully she wins, and I'll support her. She's had to play this tough sob on camera for so long. She had to step up and be this person that no one whether you like or hate her, she had to live this, persona. And she, from all angles. And so I am actually okay with that. Jey Uso, on the other hand, everything's twisting and turning, and you have everyone trying to put their hand in the pot and see what they could grab between CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins. Um, the only problem I have with this is that we're going back to Gunther. I guess third luck, right? The third luck, the charm. Sorry, this is how rusty I am. But um, you have someone who's lost to Gunther not once but twice, and the last time he lost to Gunther was a very clean victory. It wasn't out of ordinary. It wasn't like a outside interference or a DQ. I know what this would do for Jey Uso, and I'm okay with it. I just don't know if I guess Gunther's the only probable opponent because I don't see Jey Uso ever, beating, Cody Rhodes where he's at
it,
right now.
right. And I just don't. I like Jey Uso, but I like him better when he's with his brother
Yeah.
as the Usos. I like him. It's one of the cases like there's quite a few teams out there. where they are such a good team. I don't want to see them break up. And the Usos were one of those. I did not want to see Jay and Jimmy, twin brothers, break up and go singles. Um, but I think right now they're striking while the iron is hot because
Yeah.
Jay is one of the most over, one of the most popular people in the company right now. I mean, because you got
Something that
people
you
walking around
didn't do
going
with LA
yeet,
Knight.
yeet,
Yeah.
right? And because I mean, he's walking around doing the yeet, yeet, and the whole crowd's getting
Yeah.
into it.
I
That
texted
to
you
me
that a
does,
couple weeks ago. It reminds
yeah,
me of Daniel Bryan with the Yes movement.
yeah. Um, but once you know, does that translate into putting the world title on him though? That's the thing. I mean, it's like, yes, they're extremely popular. You put the title on them, now what? Because
Yeah.
people like supporting the underdog. You put the title on them, they're no longer the underdog.
And that's
I
what
mean,
happened with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens when they won the tag titles from them a couple years back.
right,
They had this massive buildup for Sammy turning on the bloodline. And once you won the
yeah,
tag titles, it's just the hype just did not carry on. And you are correct.
right,
I
and
mean,
it
Jay
can't.
Uso,
I
yeah,
mean, because that build up, you're building up to this certain thing that you want to happen, and once that thing happens, it's like, okay, now, the next day, the next morning's got to come in, and then it's like, okay, now which direction do you go? You cannot
yeah.
maintain that momentum as a champion because you're building up to being the champion. Now you are the champion.
What's
Now what?
next? And then you got to ask yourself on Raw or whatever brand afterwards he gets drafted to or whatever he goes to, who are his lined up challengers to face? I mean, I know he's been in the runs with, Drew McIntyre, but it seems to me that Drew's on a different, on a different storyline right now. And does that even equal to a fair fight? And I guess I mean you put him up against guy. I mean, you win. Let's say Jay wins the title. You think maybe the Bloodline or Solo Sokoa comes back and maybe says, "Hey, the title needs to come back to the family." I don't
And
know.
everything that happened, because I guess Solo Sokoa now there's kind of a in limbo. Which direction is he going?
So, and I would love to cover that here in a second, but I just want to just create this image of this is what's so great about how this new generation or this new era is taken off is that you don't know where that story hits. I mean, does how bad does Jay Uso beating Gunther and becoming the new champion mean for his career? Or do you keep the title on Gunther? And if whatever the case may be, what is afterwards? And so there's no clear prediction or a clear lane that you could choose down, which is great for business because you could go anyway. It's just taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented in front of you, which I think the WWE are clearly taking.
Right. So I don't know, but
You see Solo
that's
Sikoa return on SmackDown.
mm-hmm.
Was that
And
was
he's
that appropriate for him though? And I understand this new Bloodlines fallen apart ever since they lost, or especially since he lost the Ulafala, right? Did I pronounce that right? Uh,
it doesn't matter.
I'm so my thing is from my perspective, maybe Solo returning is a bit too soon. Maybe having an impactful turn at Elimination Chamber or even at a WrestleMania image could do him a little bit better. I feel like he's kind of fallen off that wagon, not just in the storyline, but with the crowd overall.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of things up in the air, and that's actually stuff. I mean, I'm definitely going to be covering later on in the episode.
Okay. Okay.
Part of the other reason for this episode, and I mentioned this to you before, we started recording, was since I never did a year in review.
Okay.
You know, I'm actually going to do that sort of. I'm
Yeah.
only going, but I'm covering the past 12 months for, I guess, kind of me and wrestling, but some of the other things that have been happening in wrestling, and also explain a couple of things that have happened over the past 12 months that also led to me not recording as much. And some of it left me a little bit bitter.
Okay.
because I was kind of ticked off. Um, Last March, and I don't want to cover this too much because I've already mentioned it on the show before. This is what and this is what I'm saying from March last year to now, some things that have happened, for me with wrestling. Okay. I went up to Chillicothe and I was actually helping out. In fact, Rescue Randy and I both were helping out with the event in Chillicothe, put
Mm.
on by Jimmy Hines, also known as Bobby Fulton. And while we were there, we were treated like absolute garbage. I don't want to go into details, but it was bad enough that when we left, Randy said, I will never, ever do something like this again. And, you know, um, and since then, I've actually had Duke from Duke Loves Wrestling. Yeah, there was some things that happened on his podcast concerning Jimmy Hines and his son Dylan Hines. And, there was an altercation between the two, which was recorded. Well, I had Duke on my show to talk about that, and I explained what happened to me and Randy at Chillicothe. And Duke, of course, laid out an invitation on my show, which I was all for it. I do all the editing. I could have edited it out if I wanted to, but I wasn't going to. I wanted it to stay because I like Duke and he's a man of his word. And so we invited the Hineses to come on the show to refute anything that was said. Instead, I got a nasty message sent to me from Jimmy Hines saying I was nothing but a liar and all this other stuff, and that I was now banned from their permanently for their promotion shows. He also said I was banned from all the NWF shows, which he has no say so in that whatsoever. And so when I called, and talked to Big Mama, of course she's married to Roger Ruffin, who owns the NWF. They own the NWF, and she's like, no, you're not banned. So they called us all mad because they want to know who you were, blah blah blah. But she's like, no, you are absolutely not banned. You know yourself. You're welcome at any time. But now I'm banned from all their events. Well, the Hineses have been back in the news recently. I don't know if you've seen this with Rob Van Dam, because they have been accused of not paying wrestlers. They've been accused of forging uh, autographs on memorabilia. They've been accused of a lot of other stuff. I mean, basically, you look up bad promoters, wrestling promoters, and there's their picture. There's audio of Bobby Fulton, also known as Jimmy Hines, his real name, calling a vendor, cussing him out because the vendor actually was selling stuff at a different show.
Yeah.
Basically, he's trying to pull this. If you're going to be selling at my show, you can't work with anybody else. And I don't know if you've heard the audio from that. It's pretty nasty.
I saw it wasn't in the initial article you sent me, but I saw another article where they would add wrestlers in their promotion that would never agree to even show up to them,
Right.
and then
Yep.
tarnish their name because they failed to appear.
Right. They were doing stuff like that. They were advertising people, like you said,
I
that
did hear
had
though
never.
that what they have. I don't know if they did they already have it or it's coming up. It was canceled. Was it not canceled?
They had their show that's supposed to happen in March in Chillicothe. When obviously I
Yeah.
wasn't going to go to it anyway because for a lot of reasons. Obviously, it's not just because I'm banned, even though I've been told I could probably show up and they would have no idea who I was.
You just wear that
I could just,
mask, right? That one mask that you have that you
I bet say I got like four of them.
the one you
But
do
I
on the
would
roller
honestly,
coaster, but
oh yeah, that one. But I would honestly, if I were to go to one of their shows, I would actually want to go take a selfie with like me and one of them, and I'd be flipping off the camera,
yeah.
and then I would send it to them and say, "Oh, I thought I was banned," But um, but I'm not saying that it left me bitter, because I mean, it left
Oh
me pretty pissed off,
yeah.
because I'm like, trying to help them out, trying to make sure they had a smooth show because I'm a wrestling fan. I've been a wrestling fan now for 40 years. And Randy has been a wrestling fan for about 30 years. Randy, we're 10 years apart in age. So just, but he's been a wrestling fan for about 30 years. We were trying to help them out, right? Doing it for free. And we got absolutely crapped on. you know. Now
It
we
just
did
leaves
meet
a sour taste in your mouth for other
it.
promotions out there.
It
I know not the NWF, but other big ones that happen ever so often that it's hard to want to go in and try to help out and look at things the same way again.
right, and just seeing that part of the business, and but now since their names have been popping up again and not in a good light,
Mm.
I do feel kind of vindicated. You know,
Did their show
these
get canceled on though in March, or is that their final one? I heard
it
it was.
it they said it was going to be the final one. Then all of a sudden it got canceled.
Mhm.
Now I'm actually seeing something where they may be having a show. I don't know, to be honest with you, because I stopped following them on social media because um, I was wanting to make some comments myself, but I've gotten to the point now I don't post negative comments on. I don't get
Yeah.
into arguments on social media because just makes my blood pressure go up, and it's not worth it. Especially right now with all the politics going on, I'm like, I am not getting into debates on social media.
I prefer to have a
But
conversation in person, or just let's talk about
I
it.
just
But
rather not even, well, because you're not going to change their mind. They're not going to change your mind.
true, yeah.
So I'm like, it's pointless. It is like arguing with a brick wall. You're not
So
going to change anything.
do you feel like justice has been served from
I
your
think
perspective?
I, well, I do feel vindicated some, but
Mhm.
for them overall, I do feel like it's coming. It's
Yeah,
coming down the road for them. Um, I feel like they, their names are mud right now with a
yeah,
lot of, people within wrestling. You can see that because some of the other wrestlers now they're coming out and saying their own experiences with them. RVD,
yeah. Matt Riddle, I
Riddle,
think. Yeah,
Matt Riddle, yeah, Sabu, um, who are some of the other ones. They were even slamming on Bill Apter. It's like you don't slam on Bill Apter,
yeah.
one of the legitimate, most nicest people in the world. In fact, that very day, one positive thing that happened that day, right? So I was working with Kerry Morton and Ernest Miller,
Yeah.
right? Well, Bill Apter, for those who don't know who Bill Apter is, he was the main guy. He wasn't the editor. I always thought he was, but I was trying to. He was not the editor, but he was the main guy at like the big wrestling magazines. In fact, those magazines are still referred to as the aftermags. We're talking Person Illustrated, Inside of Wrestling,
Yeah.
The Wrestler, Sports Review Wrestling, and Wrestling USA. I mean, they had a lot of. And I used to buy all of them,
I
right?
think they
But
still
he was
sell
kind
them.
of. They still sell Person Illustrated.
Okay. Okay.
That one is still, on the shelves, but the rest of them, because when all of a sudden, well, the
Social
internet
media. Yeah.
plus, kayfabe and
I
all
remember
that was
buying
kind of
the
out the
wrestling
window.
WWE ones with the magazine, with the posters inside of them, and
Right. Um, but the After mags were like the magazines.
yeah,
And so I had met Bill Apter the year before. He did a promo for the show. I also joked that he had to change the name of the show because he called it the Armchair Podcast, not the Armchair Booking Podcast. Um, but I got his book. He autographed it. He autographed a picture for me and my son. Too. I mean, he was just one of the best interactions I've ever had at one of the meet and greets. Right. So I'm over with um, Morton and Ernest Miller, and I'm wearing, of course, my Armchair Booking T-shirt
mhm.
because, of course, it was. Kind of got to get the name out there still. And he's walking by. He's emceeing the thing, so he's on his microphone, like saying, "Oh, come see this booth." All of a sudden, he sees me, and he stops what he's doing, and he comes up to me, and he says, "Hey, man, how's it going?" And I was talking with him. I was like, "Oh, yeah." I said, "You were from that?" He said, "Yeah." I was like, "All right, that's really cool." I was like, Bill Apter kind of remembered me. Well, Randy just happened to be working with Bill that day. Bill
Mhm.
and Shark Boy. And sorry, I got my visitor, Stuart the cat, is now part of my lap. Um, well, after the meet and greet part, of course, I mean, we stayed to watch the actual wrestling. And Bill Apter was actually giving awards out to people. So, well, he had asked Randy, he said, "Hey, can you watch my stuff? Can you bring this to me in the ring?" And,
Mhm.
when he said, "I'll call you over." Randy said, "Well, sure." And if you know Randy, I mean, he's a super nice guy. Um, and, but I was sitting there, of course, with Randy, because he's, a good friend of mine. And of course, then we were there together anyway. And well, he brings him the thing, and then but Randy still has the rest of his stuff, like his actual like merchandise and things like that. And so after he gets done, finally he's able to come back and get his stuff. And I told him, I said, oh, I just want to, I said, thank you, for, I said, you remember me from a year ago. And Bill after looked at me and said, oh, he said, I always remember nice people. That's why I'm like, that's it. Bill Apter is the greatest person ever. Because he meets thousands of people every year, thousands. And he remembered me from the 15, 20-minute interaction we had a year prior in that
Yeah.
very same gym. And that's why I was like, that's it. Bill Apter, is like the greatest person ever. But they were getting mad at Bill Apter on that day. Apparently, Dylan was trying to kick him out the door because,
Mhm.
and so that tells you the kind of person or people the two of them are.
So I gotta ask,
Uh,
if you don't mind, is
Go
this?
ahead.
I feel like this is a part of, and I'm not trying to validate any reasoning behind what happened took place, but I feel like a lot of this reminds me of other similar cases and whatnot, and of old school um, ways of taking care of business, and the way
Old school
sometimes you got
ways.
like I'm talking about, just like not old school, more probably more so of just what was done back, in the
Yeah.
80s, 90s, early thousands, right before, you
You
know.
hear stories coming from like the 70s and the early 80s of the promoters, especially like the local indie promoters would do stuff like that to keep the wrestlers in line.
Right.
Well, you can't do that now.
Yeah.
It's a totally different world because the wrestlers, first of all, they're making a lot more money than what they were back then. And the veteran wrestlers, like an RVD, Matt Riddle, it's kind of hard to call him a veteran because really, I mean, if you look at the big scheme of things, Matt Riddle has not been as around as long as some other, but Matt Riddle's still a name that will draw. I mean, people will pay to see Matt Riddle.
It just
Um,
reminds me of stories like, and how wrestling has been exposed, behind the scenes, and it hasn't been so positive, back in, like I said, even in the early 2000s before the labor board took over and whatnot. Like, I remember a story that Jonathan Coachman talked about when he was with the WWE back in the day, and how business used to work. Well, then when he went back, when they invited him back to the WWE for that short period of time where he was commentating again, business wasn't the same. And when he
right.
followed up on it, it rubbed him the wrong way. So, I'm not, like I said, I'm not validating anything, because absolutely not. No one should be treated that way, especially, you think about Rob Van Dam. He's been wrestling since like the 90s. He's been through it,
Hmm.
so you should be definitely treated with a lot more respect, especially, you know, all these other, places, these, athletes. And I just, it has an old school mentality for me that obviously it's not
Yeah.
right, but
Well, Bobby Fulton, I mean, his name was known more in the 80s, maybe in the early 90s than
mhm,
anywhere else. But, and I'm going to get off the subject to him, here. This will be one of the
yeah,
last things I'll say. He was known as being part of the Fantastics, him and Tommy Rogers.
yeah,
But the Fantastics, they, to me, this is my opinion, this is Stunning Steve Barber's opinion, they were never more than upper mid card at best. They were the team you called when the Rock and Roll Express wasn't available.
yeah,
And because if you look at all the feuds they have, with the exception of the Sheep Herders, now they did have some pretty nasty feuds, pretty nasty matches with the Sheep Herders before the Sheep Herders became the Bushwhackers.
yeah.
Brutal, brutal matches. And I do recommend people watch them, like their barbed wire matches they had with them. I mean, they were just bloody. I mean, uh, they were fun to watch, but they were still never more than that upper mid card. They weren't going to be like the main eventers, like the Rock'n'Roll Express were like the main eventers everywhere they went. Rock'n'Roll Express versus
Yeah.
Midnight Express. Rock'n'Roll Express left. They moved into Fantastics,
Yeah.
to follow them.
You may
Um,
have some solid mid card matches and maybe suited well for being a mid carder, but don't walk around like you're the
right,
Road Warriors or hell, you're
right.
even
I
like,
mean,
Four
they may
Horsemen.
have
You don't have that stability.
they may have main evented a house show here and there, maybe one of the premier events, like before they were
Yeah.
called pay-per-views, here and there, but never like every single time. I mean,
Want to maintain that upper level of,
right. They were, like I
yeah,
said, upper mid card at best, you
yeah.
know. Um, and but as a promoter, he's catching a bad reputation, and now his son is catching a bad reputation.
And like I said, it goes back around to everybody now because
And
everyone who has now had some sort of experience with the Chillicothe has now, it's like you're second questioning the next
oh,
promotion you go to.
and it's not just in Chillicothe. It's when
Right.
they travel to other places, and they're catching these bad
Yeah.
reputations. But I don't want to say too much of them. I want to talk about more positive things
Hey,
that have happened like in the past
congratulations.
12 months.
Talking about positive, congratulations to Triple H, Hall of Fame inductee
Yeah.
coming up this
Oh,
year. Want to bring that up?
I was actually going to mention that here in a little bit, but I was going to say the past 12 months, I've seen events from four different companies,
Okay.
none of which were WWE or AEW. Ironically
Okay.
enough, that particular company, the one I'm not even going to mention their name of their company, if that says anything. NWF, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
you know, more often than not, if I have a choice between an NWF show and anybody else, I'm probably going to go watch the NWF
Yeah.
because I know it's going to be a quality show. I know they put on a quality product, and they want to make sure the fans are entertained. They want to make sure the fans leave happy. They take care of the fans, right? Spot Monkey Promotions, which is also based in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Um, Now you will see some of the NWF wrestlers on Spot Monkey shows, but they are I'd say, I mean, they're a solid promotion, you
Yeah.
know. Um, and Randy and I have both gone to some of their events. They will bring in more of like the bigger names as far as like doing autograph sessions and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas that is one thing I will say, if you had to make comparisons between them and the NWF doesn't bring in like the names like that. Like at the Spot Monkey shows, I've met Shane Douglas. I got Shane Douglas. See that belt on the middle shelf
Yeah.
back there?
Yeah.
Shane Douglas signed that belt, at a Spot Monkey show. In fact, and the reason why he signed it, if you know your wrestling history, Shane Douglas, and he was the NWA World Champion with that belt for all of 5 minutes, and then threw the belt down the ground, and that's when ECW was born. So, but Shane Douglas, EC3, also the year before,
Yeah.
very same gymnasium, as he was the NWA champion at the time, he signed it. But I've also met Jimmy Hart twice at those shows. I met um, Archer,
Okay.
Lance Archer.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
met him. Um, Enzo Amore was actually at the last Spot Monkey show I went to. Now I didn't get his autograph because Randy and I were both
Now,
like,
I do want to
you know,
just clarify is that doesn't mean that NWF is a bad product. They have some great
no,
talent.
not
I
at
mean,
all.
Abyss, the Wildcats still performing. He's kind of helping
Hmm.
Roger run things. I mean,
But
but
they just don't bring in like
they
for the one
also,
time appearances.
you know what happens though? I mean, yeah, you have Lord Crew that comes in once in a while. I
Hmm.
mean, but you know what I
He's an
see though
NWF
with
product.
NWF is that they're growing up. I've seen Big Mama out there promoting.
Hmm.
All I've seen, Riley Matthews trying to, get some water underneath her, and so you got homegrown talent that you got to focus
Hmm.
on and watching week in and week out. And sometimes if you could put on a good show that people talk about with just your homegrown talent, you don't need someone from you don't need a guy like an Abyss to come back and help save your
Right.
show. Then you know what, you're succeeding just fine. So nothing wrong with
Yeah.
NWF there.
Well, and I see I've actually talked to some of the wrestlers about, why don't they bring in, somebody they can get, because I mean they have all these contacts. Believe me, that was one of the things at the Chillicothe show. Big Mama, she was their women's champion. You would not believe the pop she got.
Yeah,
It was just like Randy and I were both like, "Oh my God, she got a bigger pop here than what she does at the NWF shows, and she gets big pops at NWF shows."
yeah,
I mean, the pop was huge, and so yeah, her stock is definitely up there. That's actually part of my notes too. I was going to be mentioning her. Um, but I saw those three, that company in Chillicothe, NWF, Spot Monkey, and TNA. I saw a TNA
yeah.
show thanks to our friend Trey. Trey um, got me free tickets. Fat Randy, got Randy. In fact, I saw the TNA show the day after my wife and I got back from a cruise, for our
Yeah,
25th
because I saw the day
anniversary.
before. Yeah, the day
You
that you
saw the
got
day
back. Yeah.
before.
Um.
Now that TNA show, that was the first time Randy and I were both like, "Who in the heck is Joe Hendry?"
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
found out who Joe Hendry
Well, the
was.
night before, the day I went, he debuted. I mean, he didn't debut and
So
competed, but he debuted
right.
in a.
Oh, that was because they
He
were
may
like
have
were
debuted
asking.
around then. I think he had a match
Well,
with
they were
he teamed up with Dolph Ziggler.
they were asking everybody, like the fans, who's going to win, Joe Hendry and this other,
Yeah.
and I were kind of trying to avoid the microphone because we were both like, neither one of us were really familiar with the TNA product. We were there to watch wrestling because we did know some of the names, but we wanted to see some good wrestling. By the way, some of the best seats we've ever had, both of us, because they ended up moving us to a balcony.
Yeah.
In that
I wanted to
particular
get up there. They
bit,
had that shut down. I was upset.
they invited us. They said,
Yeah.
"Hey, do you want to move?" Because we were like standing, like looking, trying to look over
Mm.
people's heads. They said, "Does anybody want to move up?" And they like asked me and Randy specifically. So,
I will
in fact,
testify until the end of time, and I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off
no,
there.
you're fine.
One thing that frustrates me with these wrestling promotions, especially because TNA, if you haven't been to a TNA event recently, it's completely different than what you'll go to like an AEW, WWE. They are recording multiple shows at one time. I remember when
Yeah,
I went, they had and they're not recording a whole show back to back. It's bits and pieces of a show
yeah,
that they're plugging in later. You don't see commentary, you don't see this and that. That all gets filled in from time to time. And so I remember when we went, the back half of it was celebrating the 25th anniversary of TNA. Okay, and they had some great
yeah,
matches. But what I don't like about it is, to be honest, is I wish they need to have something where they either one give you a match card so you know who's wrestling and what match to look
right,
for, or they need to spill out a sheet, even a small sheet of a roster page, where who's who. And that's one thing I always make. I haven't been in NWF in a while, and I don't know. I haven't been, refreshed on who's heel, who's face, what's going on. I don't need detailed information, but a little bit of information as far as, all right, who's expected to compete tonight, like a roster page, who's heel, who's not, or here's a match card to expect. I know, hey, subject to change, but that will go a long way for for fans who want to go enjoy them time. I mean, just review it and then move on. You know what I'm saying? That's my,
right.
I,
I mean, well, we knew Randy and I knew the wrestlers. We just knew them under different names. That was the thing because we knew them from WWE or even AEW, but they were coming out now. They had different names. But here's the odd thing:
mm,
now that TNA and WWE they have this agreement going, so now you're going to see them more in WWE. So I mean, there's going to be some
and I
changes
love it.
there. By the way, I saw, like I said, 4 different promotions over the past
Yeah.
12 months. I have nothing on Kenny Cummins. I don't know if you've met Kenny before. He's been at quite a few
Mm,
of the NWF shows. He has his own podcast. Um, Kenny, I've seen him personally. I saw him at the TNA show. I've seen him at WWE shows. I've seen him at the AEW show. I've seen him at Chillicothe. Obviously, I've seen him at NWF shows. I want to say I've seen him at some of the spot monkey shows. Plus, he goes to like OV because Kenny lives in Lexington.
mm.
So he goes to like OVW. He goes to um, some of the other ones that are ran like closer to Lexington. You know, it's McKinney. I mean, he actually posted on his own Facebook here recently, like all the ones he did in the past year. He's gone and watched like 9 different promotions at least. So I have nothing on Kenny.
Yeah.
And Kenny is like, I mean, he is like a fan's fan. I mean, he's met like a lot. He's actually had some other. He actually had Bailey on his podcast back in like 2012 when she wasn't even known as Bailey yet. So when he actually met
Okay.
her again, yeah, he went to the Rumble. So he actually met her again up there, and he got his picture, and I guess they talked and whatever. But yeah, Kenny, good dude too, by the way. If you ever see him like at an NWF show, I want to say he's about 6'3", 6'4", black dude, kind of skinny with glasses. You
Yeah.
know, super friendly dude. You know, always love talking to Kenny about just wrestling. But yeah, I mean, he travels quite a bit. And so for him to, I'm glad to see him doing really well with his own show. Plus, he has other podcasts that aren't wrestling. He covers a lot of the local music scene in Lexington, But one of my favorite events that I saw over the past 12 months, Summer Sizzler, right there in
Mm,
Florence at the Florence Y'alls Stadium.
yeah.
Um, a good event. I mean, that's the NWF's main event every year. Oddly enough, I actually didn't sit in the bleachers. I sat at my table because
Oh, yeah.
I was like, you know what? This kind of feels like, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it's like almost like, you're in like one of the executive suites, like at a ball game, a football game. You're like,
You're on the
oh, look at that.
concourse, right? I mean, you're
Right. I
right
mean,
there in the action still.
well, theirs at the Florence where they had us at was like all the way. We would have been like in right field, like and up a little bit.
Mm,
But it's like
okay.
where they had all the merch tables and everything set up. But it was like me and the guys from the Dad World Order podcast. We were all like, are any of us going to move? Probably not, because we can see I mean, there was a little bit of a distance from where we're at to the ring, but we weren't like cramped in with everybody.
Yeah.
We were kind of sitting there. It's almost like you're sitting there drinking mimosas, going, "Oh, look at the, you know, great matches." I mean,
Yeah.
they just put on a great show. But yeah, fun event. I actually was one of the sponsors for it. And
I
they,
still think yeah, I still think NWF, I know we talked about this numerous times in the past, but they need to bring these podcasters together and just do one, have something set up
hmm
to do one live at these venues. Like I'm not saying it's gonna kick off, but you never know. Like you bring from all different outside, aspects.
that was actually something else. Normally, when they are setting up their sponsors, they don't have two sponsors with the same kind of like merchandise or company.
Yeah.
I had already signed on to sponsor, as a podcaster, and then the Mike and Big Rig from DWO, when they were hitting up Shannon, Mama Cat, Shannon Harris,
Yeah.
about sponsoring, she actually contacted me and she said, "Hey, these guys they also want to sponsor. Would you have an issue
Yeah.
with that?" And I'm like, "Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I'd love those guys. I mean, I said, podcasting is not like, like a travel agent business." And I say that
Yeah.
because my wife has a travel agency, but they already had a travel agent sponsor, so
It's
they
not
weren't going to have
competitive.
two.
They're
Right. I
united.
said,
They kind of work
right.
with each other.
And I even told her that. I said, we actually support each other. So yes, by all means, if they want to sponsor, go for it. I said, because I'm
I
friends with
I
those
just
guys.
say
I mean,
these next one, like whatever's the next big thing, right? They just need to get, hey, you know, Steve, Mike, let's get together and just get one table and do a like a live podcast
right.
from your booth before the show. That's what I will say.
I would, I've actually wanted to do like a TikTok video, or like you said, like a live, before
TikTok
the
live.
show.
I mean, I don't.
Well,
There's
part of the issue
numerous.
is, well, they play music, before the show start. As
Mm.
soon as the algorithm picks up that song, your live stream's going to stop.
So we
I
just got to
mean,
keep on talking.
right. So,
I mean, or
um,
put us in a place. I mean, there's places where you could be away from the crowd, and yeah, you don't get the great seating or viewpoint, but there's ways around it. I'm just saying that
yeah.
the brain can expand a little bit, but no,
Well, and part of it is also you got to make sure you have a good enough internet connection, whether you're on data or
yeah,
whether you're on Wi-Fi or whatever. So, I mean, there are some limitations.
hmm
But speaking of, you brought a Big Mama, a while ago, our friend, Tasha,
yeah,
uh, just a great person. I just want to throw that out there first. I mean, she really is just a great person, and she's been very supportive of this podcast. And she says, she's like, all the support you give us, we want to throw that right back at you. So I love her and Roger to death. But I want to give some shout outs. So she's the first one because she's been winning some gold lately. I don't know if you've
mm,
seen that. She's the NWF Women's Champion.
yeah,
Um, and she's also the NWA Women's Television Champion, and she's the NWA one half of the NWA Women's Tag Team Champions.
hmm
So I mean, and these are not like light titles. I mean, these are especially the women's tag team titles. I mean, that one has a long lineage. Yes, it's kind of because when women's wrestling at one point, there was like one women's wrestler or two in the whole entire NWA. Now women's wrestling is huge. I mean, and for her to be the women's tag team champions of the oldest company there is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's saying a lot. I mean, but
And it's
that also
not
goes to the
just not just I think what's special about this, and I think this is where, we're seeing this down at these smaller levels of professional wrestling. And I think what you're starting to notice this in the upper levels, especially when you talk about like WWE, for example. Um, she's not just holding a title, and she's not just holding multiple titles. She's holding multiple titles in different companies. So
different
they're
companies. Yeah,
trusting her enough to hold that reputation as champions of multiple brands. And now, do you see her? I haven't been to an NWF show in a while. Do you see her carrying those titles to those promotions too, or
um,
not
not
yet?
because when the last time I went to an NWF show, because here that's actually something else. I've only been really able to go to the ones in Mount Orb.
Yeah,
They were supposed to have a show in December, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen.
yeah,
And it was, in fact, even Randy and I were both like, "Why didn't we do the show they're supposed to have?" And it just kind of didn't happen. So
right,
something had to have been but they're supposed to have a show in March.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
I'm gonna go to that. But no, I haven't because she didn't have those titles yet. Now
Okay,
she might because I mean
I
that
would
does
like that.
bring um well
Let's
when
see how you
Jordan
doing. It's
Clearwater
yeah,
Jordan Clearwater when he won, I think it was also the men's TV title. Um he actually made an appearance at the NWF as the NWA television champion. Um or was he in TNA at the actually I think it was NWA at the time. Um, Carson Drake is now the TV champion.
yeah,
I want to see Matt Mims. Now, Matt Mims has never been from WF,
yeah.
but I would love to see Matt Mims because he's been on this show a couple times. He's now another former NWA television champion. I'd love to see him do an appearance. But when they got those titles, especially Jordan Clearwater, he actually came and they said he is the NWA, and it was actually another way of bringing that. But he's an
Right,
NWF product.
right. Yep.
He came out of Bone Crushers, and that's
And
why
so
he's able to do that.
just the point I'm trying to make though is that we have, the last time I've seen somebody of significance hold multiple titles from multiple wrestling companies, you talk about what Kenny Omega, Zack Ryder, right? It's been more prominent to the men's side of wrestling to see Tasha, Big Mama step up to be able to represent the female, women's division and carry
Right,
multiple promotions at any level. I think it's just that step forward in the wrestling industry that we will eventually, hopefully, I would love to see it up in the, majors.
right. Um, Now another shout out I'm going to kind of give, and it's kind of a little bit of a different shout, because Big Mama, when she won the NWF Women's title, she won it off Nikki Victory, and then Nikki Victory all of
Yeah.
a sudden retired. Now I kind of suspected the reason why she retired, even though nobody said it, because it was so abrupt. And Nikki Victory, I mean, she was one who Roger Ruffin himself said on our show, Nikki Victory has no ceiling because she had that much talent. But then all of a sudden, once somebody all of a sudden just says, "Okay, I'm done," and it's like there's no reason why. I suspected, and a couple months later, um, I was actually right about my suspicions. Well, it turns out she was pregnant because she's married to
Mm-hmm.
fellow wrestler Joshua. He just no last name. He used to have the last name Joshua Adams a long time ago in NWF, but he's just been going by Joshua now for a couple of years.
Yeah.
They've been married now for a few years, but well, she just had the baby about a month ago.
Oh,
So I
okay.
want to give a shout out and congratulations to
Yeah.
both of them. Um, Give another shout out to Wildcat Chris Harris because he's just been killing it. Because you got to think a couple years ago he was at kind of a low point.
Yeah.
Both definitely in his personal life and because when something I don't want to get into details, but when something you do makes it on the news, and it's because of who you are, that's why it made it on the news. he's turned it around and he's in just phenomenal shape. He looks great in the
Yeah.
ring. He's doing
Yeah.
appearances, not just here locally. I mean,
Everywhere. Yeah.
not everywhere. I mean, he's going and making appearances, like in the Northeast. He's making other appearances.
But
I
see,
think at least,
he's not just focused on WWE or professional wrestling. He's helping recovering many people.
right,
After beating the system, he's helping others beat the system too.
right. And he gave me a shout out. He didn't do it on the show.
Mhm.
Um, he kind of did because I actually helped arrange for him to be on Duke Loves Wrestling's, that podcast because Duke said, "Hey, is there any way you can get, or they actually hit me up and said, "Hey, can we be on Duke?" Because they were promoting, one of the shows. And I said, "Sure." And so I made a lot of that happen. Well, Duke actually said, give a shout out to me. He said my name on his show. And then Duke told me later on that Wildcat was, he was giving me some other shout outs in private. And he was like, I really want to see his show do well. Talk about armchair booking. And that's another reason I've been like really trying to motivate myself to get it back going because I mean, like I said, I've been kind of in a slump, over the past few months. But when you have the endorsement of somebody like Wildcat Chris Harris, I mean, it is kind of a motivating factor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, of course, obviously give a shout out to Duke for Duke Loves Wrestling. Um, my friends at the Finisher Wrestling podcast, they actually just returned. They were also kind of on a break for a little bit, but they've released a couple episodes lately. And Mike from the show, he's like the main guy who I correspond with. He hit me up a few days ago, just wanting to see how I was doing. And so, I mean, that's always appreciative, when somebody, not because, hey, how's the pot? They want to know how you as a person are doing, and that's
Yeah.
always very good thing. And, of course, my good friends Kyle and Rescue Randy for all their support. Because yes, Justin was pushing me like every couple of days. Hey, you gonna do an episode? Hey, you gonna do an episode? Hey, you gonna do an episode? But Kyle and Randy were also telling me, hey, if you ever need help, if you ever need somebody to come on, just let me know. But of course, they're also very, very, um, if I were to see Kyle like his Rolodex, if people don't know what a Rolodex is, but his planner, you know, I don't think the man has like any free time at all, hardly. Because he stays busy and not just working on himself. He's always, I mean, he puts up like numbers when it comes to weightlifting that, like even like calculators may not be able to hit these numbers because he puts up some ridiculous weight and he actually holds like records. At least for like in West Virginia, he lives in Maryland, but he competes a lot in West Virginia. He actually holds some of the records there and he's winning competitions. Well, now he's also helping other people,
Mm.
and that's just the kind of person Kyle is. I mean, he likes helping people. And Randy, I mean, Randy's an EMT. That's what we call Rescue Randy. What's
Yeah.
an EMT do? They help people. I mean, that is their, specific job is they help people. Um, and I know there's going to be other people, that I'm leaving out. Obviously Trey, because Trey, the former co-host of the Jay and Trey Sports Cup podcast, which is now morphed into TNC Sports Talk. Um, because Trey, if he has a free ticket for something, he's going to call you up. He's got me free tickets for the TNA show. He got me free tickets to watch the Bengals practice, even though I'm not a Bengals fan. Um,
Yeah.
but who am I missing? I know I'm missing some other people.
It's been so long. I gotta apologize. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah, that's
think
what I'm
of
saying. I mean,
anybody. It's
we're both rusty. Actually,
bless their
uh,
hearts, right? Or
bless their hearts, Jamie and John from True Crimecast, and bless their hearts. Actually, I do one person I do have to always give a shout out. One of my good friends, obviously, uh, Waylon Davis.
Mhm.
Because he's still going through a lot, so we're still trying to figure out what direction we're going to go, with that. But still unsure what's going to be happening. But Dwaylon's been one of my closest friends, for over 3 decades now, since we were in high school.
Mhm.
So definitely got to always remember to give him a shout out. So, but as far as like wrestling goes, and I'm just looking at everything going on. This is actually something else I've been kind of scratching my head about some of this stuff. And maybe I just need to take kind of a sit back and just kind of look at everything once I get a chance to really analyze everything, because that's one of the things about this show analyzing either present product or the past product. Now, how would we do it different? Armchair booking,
Yeah.
right? But I'm looking at the way things is right now, and I really have no idea about the future of the industry. I'm kind of hesitant to say anything. I don't even want to say it's a peak time for the business. The reason I say that is because how is Netflix going to impact the business overall? I don't know how what the contract is, what the
So,
timeline is. Is a year, 2 years?
so the idea for Netflix is to get Raw global. Before Netflix, you couldn't watch Raw live in a lot of countries. You had to watch it in an after show, right? On a recording when it was uploaded to Peacock. And even some countries don't get Peacock, right? So the dynamic is to be able to reach out to countries that have not been able to get Raw live when it aired on Mondays.
That's why.
I believe that. Well, so this was the whole, and I'm just, I remember this as if it was yesterday. I remember the conversation that Triple H talks about when he says the future is international. I feel like they have reached only so far that they can do. And this is why we're seeing more pay-per-views. I still call them pay-per-views and overseas. I mean, what next year's Royal Rumble is going to be in Saudi Arabia, I believe.
Is it?
So I mean, listen, Elimination Chambers in Toronto in 2 weeks. We're just
Well, I mean, Toronto. I mean, WrestleMania 6 was in Toronto.
we're just
WrestleMania, which one? 19.
but we're just expanding that demographic range to the audience. We've seen this with the Saudi, experience that still goes on, right? We're getting back into those international shows where they bring PLEs over out there to the United Kingdom, or to Germany, or stuff like that. So I feel like this is just another way to give global fans the access to watch, wrestling in live act time, because apparently there's a lot of countries that don't get USA Network.
Right.
So this is one way, and it's all testing the waters to see how it goes. Eventually, I think when you have a lot of these streaming devices that now are becoming your new, like for example, Hulu. Okay, because I have Hulu not just for the subscription, but I have that entire bundle, spending like $100 for it, where you get cable, right? All your local channels, like plus 75 plus, TBS, TNT, USA. And then you get the ESPN and Disney. Well, you get wrestling with it. I mean, we're transitioning. It's the transitional period. And I mean, TKO see this opportunity, and we're going to take it, they're going to at least try it out. I don't see any harm in it.
Well, I mean, we have to see because they say they want Netflix to go international, but it depends on your country. There's some things that you still can't watch on Netflix if it's not available in your country. So maybe it's a way to, like you said, make it available in these countries
I
if they have
remember
Netflix.
the first day of Netflix back in January, they did promote a lot of overseas countries. And I don't want to say the wrong countries off the top of my head, but there was a lot that were able to watch it live.
I actually didn't watch it live, and I'm trying to remember. There was something going on that night where I could not watch it live. I don't remember now what it was. It doesn't matter. Um, but with WB, they also have, I mentioned before, the TNA partnership. I mean, now
Yeah.
that's been more linked in with NXT, which is fine, but they keep bringing Joe Hendry out, and honestly, I'll be happy because Joe Hendry, I believe in Joe Hendry. You say his name, I'm
Yeah.
still waiting for him to appear.
I'm
Look
clapping.
behind your shoulder. Yeah. Um, by the way,
So,
Randy and I, we constantly send each other Joe Hendry memes and things like that now.
and I'm fine with the TNA NXT collaboration. I think this was something that we wanted a long time ago, and the WWE has kind of been last to the party. I know they've recognized here in certain spots, but it doesn't tarnish what happens on Raw and SmackDown yet. You like I said, you test the waters with what happens in NXT, which is its own little brand now. And you got to be impressed with what NXT has became over the last few years. And
It's still a developmental territory though. That's the thing.
yeah, but
It
they still are taking it as far as they can to
yeah,
becoming
but
their own brand of.
it's still a AAA equivalent. Think about it.
Yeah.
AAA, maybe double A, but um,
So I
but
got to ask you then, because now I don't know if you know, or if you've been told, or you found out about everything else is kind of now they brought back a kind of version of Tough Enough again. That's big airs tonight.
really,
It's not
I
called
did not
Tough
know
Enough. I
that.
think it's Evolved or L something. I don't know the name of it.
I will have to go check that out because I actually did watch the last time they had Tough Enough. That was the one where a
It's called
certain
LFG, and it is aired on A&E Network. The season kicks off tonight, and basically, it's kind of like I want to say I kind of resemble a Tough Enough series, where you have Booker T, Mickey James, Bubba Ray Dudley, and the Undertaker. They're all going through and training these cast or men and women, young men and women that want to become a WWE superstar.
okay, so it sounds kind of like Tough Enough, but are they eliminating people every week? Though that's the thing. Tough Enough
I
actually eliminate.
will have to watch it tonight. I'm assuming so at some
Right.
point. And then I think they brought back Evolve as well.
Hmm.
I don't know if that ever
Well,
canceled, but
speaking of Mickey James, this year is also we have the John Cena farewell tour. If you know
yeah.
the connection, by the way, Mickey
Oh yeah.
James, John Cena, that's an old school thing. But um, Cena's on his farewell tour, but sort of. I didn't. I got why he wanted to compete in one more Royal Rumble. I'm glad he didn't win
Yeah.
it because I think that would have just made people mad. Um,
So, yeah, this farewell tour is throughout the entire course of the year. The last show he's going to air is the last show of 2025, which is going to be in Boston. I believe it's a SmackDown,
okay.
from my understanding. And he's just, this is just a thrill ride. Now, he proclaims that he doesn't want to step on anyone's toes, doesn't want to overtake anyone's spotlight, but um,
Because he did that in the past
well, you could
when
kind
he
of tell at some point he's going to do it. Now, a lot of people want to see him break that streak. And I think here's what I want people to recognize. Ric Flair holds the streak, and I think that streak is going to be so far greater than John Cena's. And here's the reason why. He's done it across multiple promotions.
hmm
Okay. John Cena's only limited to the WWE, which is great, but he's competed against a lot of similarity. How many times did he beat Randy Orton or Triple H or Batista for it? So you maybe want to separate that streak if it does get broken to just a WWE streak, not a just a professional wrestling standpoint. But
I'm honestly,
I'm
I'm
intrigued.
not that I'm not that impressed by. I held the title this many times. Well, you also
The
lost it
next
that many
night,
times too.
the next night you
So
cash in your
um,
rematch and win it back.
right. So um, yeah, that would, yeah.
Now, I would
Um,
like to
but
see him face guys like Punk and Orton and I think he's faced Logan before. I don't know. I don't remember, but
he needs to go against our truth.
R-Truth, LA
I'd
Knight.
watch that match. Our truth can bring it. Our truth is older than I am, and I'm old, and he can
He's
bring it, and he
he,
looks phenomenal.
he looks like
So
he's 30. Like, shoot.
yeah, he does. Then another thing, switching to a different company we haven't mentioned yet, the status of AEW. I have not been able to really keep up with AEW as much. I mean, that's part of me. I guess I could have been watching it, but I just haven't been. Um, but every time I'm seeing these things, it's like there's like a revolving door right now of wrestlers that are joining AEW because WWE released them, or they're leaving AEW because they realize the grass is not greener. And they just released quite a few other ones like Malachi Black, Aleister
Hmm.
Black, whatever you want to call him, and some other ones. I'm just seeing the headlines and I'm like, well, what's going to be going on with this company? But then it's been pointed out they have, the owner or owners, father and son, the Khan family. they have so much money because of the Jacksonville Jaguars and because
Yeah.
of whatever football club they own over in the UK. They're not going to be, I mean, yes, they may be losing money on it, but they're still not going to let it drop. It's not like WCW, which was owned by a television company. I mean,
Yeah.
they own the company outright. Um, no idea what's going to happen with them. I think Tony
Yeah.
Khan needs to step back and stop getting involved, in like his Twitter things. And
I really don't know what's been going on with AEW. It's not like I don't want to watch it. I just been haven't been intrigued. Nothing's
right,
captivating me. And I still feel like AEW is one of those shows that they try to get every little thing in and every little second. They don't let anything build. And there's really no range. There's no form of structure. You kind of just pick your own fights, brawl it out, and then here you go. I mean, and they may be focused still on maybe certain people, certain talent, and then the rest kind of fends
and
for yourself.
they've also they're kind of finding out the hard way, but they should have already addressed this already. You don't have your executives also doubling as wrestlers.
But that's what
You know what I mean?
AEW was built around on. You brought in nothing but wrestlers. And I get that, right? In order to run a wrestling company, you have to have experienced wrestlers who know how to
Right.
run it. But I mean,
But
at the
but
same time,
were the young bucks really experienced enough? Cody Rhodes grew up in the business. And then he finally left there after he helped build it up, and he was probably disgusted by some things happening. Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega, yeah, he's
Chris
been around a long
Jericho.
time. Chris Jericho's not on the board though. That's the thing.
No, but he did
That's what
have
I'm
his
saying.
fair
It's
say in, right? I mean, he
he did. I mean, he's going to have influence, but he's still not the decision maker. Um, and I think that's where AEW, how do you fire or how do you tell them you need to stay on because they got to have other people on the board too. That's the
right.
thing. It's not just Tony Khan, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and that's it. There's got to be other people there as well because I mean, they're not publicly traded, but it sounds
Oh,
like
they
they're at
are.
least privately traded. I mean, um,
I think they are. It's just I don't know. And you know what? I'm okay with AEW. I'm not worried about it
no,
because
I
guess
don't
what?
hate them. I mean, I mean, their audience numbers are definitely suffering. My daughter actually saw an AEW show up at her college back in the fall,
Yeah.
and she got free tickets, and they told her and her friends who got the tickets, they're like, by the way, we're going to be moving you around,
Right.
to seats because we don't want to have empty seats on the camera. And so she said she started out in one seat, and the people with the actual tickets showed up, and so they had to move them. And they didn't just choose a seat; they were moved
Yeah.
by the people running it, and just so they didn't have any empty spaces. And when I saw them in Cincinnati um, about a year and a half ago, this was during the time there were the rumors, I guess you want to call it that. They said only half the arena is filled and it's all on one side. Well, guess what? That's exactly what was going on. Half the arena there at the Heritage Bank Center in
Mhm.
Cincinnati, half of it was filled. It was all on one side. The other
And
side
yet you're
was empty.
revenuing in a Heritage Bank is not cheap to rent out.
No, it's not.
Look at. I mean, here's the thing. Every wrestling company starts from the bottom, and they grow.
Yeah.
I think that AEW tried to run in the deep, swim in the deep section, and then they got holstered back. Right now, they're trying to
They,
swim again, maybe.
well, they were
Um,
this. They started at number two. They jumped TNA Impact. They jumped Ring of Honor. They jumped
but
all
that
the
was
other
all because of
ones.
pockets, right? Television deals, money to bring in talent that was being released from the WWE. Listen, I don't blame them one bit for doing what they did, but I don't think they really was educated. I don't think they really started in a foundation, unlike a lot of these companies who grow. I mean, look at TNA. They kind of almost did the same thing, didn't get the same pop, but they kind of have now just, they were put in their place and they maintained, their spot for quite some time, which is not number one, or number two. They're kind of just in there with the flow, and
Well,
AEW is going to be that way
yeah.
eventually. But
Um, now, one of the other things about the current prognosis. I'm kind of jumping back to WWE, but I think this also
Okay.
applies to AEW. Um, and this is why I'm saying I'm kind of hesitant saying it's a peak time for the business. Right now, the storylines that I'm seeing in WWE, they're kind of becoming stale because they're being recycled. I'm talking about the Bloodline. The Bloodline, honestly, it's been boring me now for about a year.
Yeah.
Once, or I really, ever since WrestleMania, because once Roman lost, and then Solo went from being the enforcer, he's the youngest person in the group. All of a sudden, he's jumping in there trying to lead it.
He
That
has
to me, I
so
was
much
like,
potential though,
mm,
too, though. But if they played it a bit differently, though, where he was very dominant and he was very destructive, and then he maybe actually won a title or two. They didn't have no titles to put on him to give him. They didn't really give Tomatunga or Tongaloa opportunities to really establish themselves. It was come in and it's a hit. And that was it. They didn't let nothing build. They didn't let nothing sit upon fans. Like what Roman did and the Usos did for the past 4 years, they lacked that. They told this story, which now is kind of salty over an 8 month period. And now it's kind of like, well, one, do you even want to see it no more? I mean, Roman Reigns won that match. He, earned back the Uvalafala. And where has he been since then, besides the Royal Rumble? I mean, he hasn't, not even Paul Heyman
right.
has speaked on his behalf recently. So I don't know where it's going. It has so much potential though, because the story, I don't think the family story is over yet nearly as far what it could be. But you, here's what you also have, look at. You have John Cena who's going to take up, TV time and a match,
Yeah.
right? You got CM Punk and, you have Cody Rhodes and, as your champion. You have CM Punk and Seth Rollins and big names like Drew McIntyre. And now you're trying to fit in a Gunther who's been not really recognized as your world champion in the last couple months. And, now
Which
you're trying to
doesn't make
throw
any sense.
exactly. I mean, he was not even there on the
He was
grand premiere
Gunther went.
of
I
Raw
mean,
on Netflix.
he was dominating everything. IC champ.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did not lose. He's now the longest reigning IC champ ever, and the IC champ with the most number of days as champion. I mean, there's two different categories here, and it's like, yeah, he was perfect to put the world title on him. They put it on him, and then they barely even mention him. It doesn't make any sense because so I'm
Like I
thinking that
said, he was
somebody,
not there. You would think you would have your main champion holder on the premiere series of Netflix Raw. He wasn't in
and
attendance. He
yeah,
wasn't there. And I'm like, I'd give up 15 minutes from The Rock showing up to give you Gunther.
right, and
Um,
well, then no, another one that they're bringing back again is Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. It's like, are they friends? They're not friends. They're friends. They're not friends. They're friends. They're not friends.
mhm.
It's kind of like the Undertaker and Kane. It's like they're brothers and they're fighting each other. Well, no, they're brothers and they're tag team. Or they're brothers are fighting each
Remind
other again. Oh
me
no, they're
of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa when they had their feud in NXT.
yes.
Listen, I don't mind. I just don't know if that match is as heated for a WrestleMania, or in this. I think they're going to have this match at Elimination Chamber. But then, what
Oh,
do you leave for WrestleMania? I don't know.
I
You
mean, I
know,
would, but I don't know, but
you have so
but yeah,
many moving pieces, which is a good thing. You have such great talent, but you lack right now. I think they're trying to put all these pieces together to make it make sense, and I feel like that's where we're struggling. Yes, I could see Jey Uso and Gunther at WrestleMania. Would a different build-up be more probable for me? Yes, sure. Whoever's walking out of the chambers facing Cody Rhodes, I mean, it could be anybody. Um, I don't know. My thing is who out of the people that are capable of taking the title away from Cody? That's my thing. And let's say, because I know a lot of the rumors have been talked about John Cena and Cody, right? Do
right.
you really see John Cena beating Cody? Would it benefit any of them besides
No,
the
it wouldn't.
number? Would it benefit Cody from losing?
If John Cena were to win any title right now, the crowd would just boo mercilessly. I mean, it would
But at the
be
same time, Cody Rhodes' title reign has been subpar. You've had this
yeah.
2 year hype up to win the title. You finally do. And don't get me wrong,
And
you've
now
had
what?
some great matches, but it hasn't been
Right,
really. I think I liked him better when he was chasing something. And that goes for anybody, right? Jey Uso is chasing
right. That's what I'm saying. The
WrestleMania.
underdog. You
Yeah.
want to see the underdog. But well, on to other announcements. You mentioned the first one earlier. Triple H has been announced that he's going in the Hall of Fame. Now, people are kind of squashing on that, going, wait a minute, isn't he the one who makes the decision? No, somebody else had to have made that decision. Triple H, oddly enough, I mean, I believe the man actually has integrity. Somebody else had to put his name in to be in the Hall of Fame. He's not going to wrestle anymore. He cannot wrestle medically. He is done. His doctors, I mean, he had to have a defib placed in his heart. He cannot wrestle anymore. He left his boots in the ring. He's done. So yes, Triple H going to the Hall of Fame does make sense. The only other one I know about going in so far now is Michelle McCool.
Mhm.
Really? I I don't see what she. Nothing against her as a wrestler, but what did she really? What impact did she make besides she's married to one of the greatest wrestlers of all time?
I don't feel like anyone took her seriously until she married the Undertaker. No disrespect to Michelle McCool. I think because I watched her a lot on SmackDown, the
Right.
Layla
And
Cool stuff. But I don't. She didn't. Like I said, no. Just I think what you look at, she was the beginning. That roster list of her time was the beginning of. All right, you had Trish Stratus, Lita, who wrestled, and they were competing, but you hear the backstage stories of the past and you hear that, hey, they wrestled better than the men half the time and they weren't supposed to. And they were
right.
taken under Finley's, realms to become a wrestler. And that's where you start transitioning that time period of, all right, what came after that? The four horsewomen, right? Of now women are actually viewed as wrestlers. So yeah, I get it. For the time period that you were supposed to be divas, you wrestled and you had some, I guess, some really good matches. Um, she's gonna eventually be put in. So whether it's now or later, I mean, fine. I mean, Triple H is a big enough name, obviously. And you know what? I think it's also time to take a moment and just look at Triple H and recognize what he's been able to bring in to the WWE that was sinking so
Yeah.
badly because it's not just TK. Yeah, TKO has the pockets, they have the money, they have the resources, to provide for Hunter, but he has to be able to bring it all together. And I think he's been kind of the focus point. So, hey, take a moment and appreciate him saving the WWE in a sense.
I can think of a lot of other names that should be in the Hall of Fame that aren't there. That could
Yeah.
be maybe a future episode that we can go
So, can
over.
I
But
ask you this?
yes, and we got to wrap it
I,
up here soon. So
All right, future episode, maybe put on agenda. Should they change the format of how they select WWE Hall of Famers? Should it be appointed by the after you retire by so many, like a baseball system where you have, colleagues or writers vote in a point system?
I could see that. In fact, it would actually make sense instead because before it was just one person making the decision, and that really depended on what kind of mood he was in that day, and also where was WrestleMania going to be held,
Yeah.
because that's why like certain people like the Freebirds did not get into the Hall of Fame until
Yeah.
it was going to be held in Dallas because the
Yeah.
Freebirds were so over in Dallas because of world class championship wrestling.
And you know what?
Um,
Because you instead of what happened personally, you put them on a list, and like you said, you have people vote. You limit the amount of people who vote. Maybe three people get
right.
elected one year, but now you are giving it because wrestling is kind of now viewed as a sport first, and then
Ish.
entertainment.
Yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
you kind of give the fans a reasoning of, okay, where did this come from? People voted, and those people were elected by whatever process you want to elect them by. So now there's a reasoning besides just plugging in. All right, who do we feel like should go in this year? I don't know. I'm
That is
just
definitely going to be a future episode, and it's something that's going to be debated for a very long time. But for now, I actually do have to go ahead and give you back your time to go spend with your son, um
good.
and I got to go and start getting ready to eat dinner because it's about that time. So and go check out how much snow we have. So, but I want to thank you again, once again, Justin, for coming on. Everybody, go check out TNC Sports Talk. I don't know what all I know you've been kind of
It's gaming.
on a
It's
yeah, just gaming here
I want
lately.
to get back
So
into it, but in the meantime, just sports gamings, all that baseball, football, wrestling. It's kind of just content, and it's starting to grow. I like it, but I feel like this is where I ultimately still want to be at the end of the day.
well, and I definitely see you coming on my other show, the Cubicle Chat podcast, to
Yeah.
talk some actual other sports as well, because March Madness is just around the corner, and along with that, but we just had the Super Bowl, and we got some other entertainment things to talk about. But I must say, it's great to be able to record again. Hopefully, we both knock the rust off, and we'll be able to do this again sometime. Um, definitely got to have you back on as a co-host, and this has been fun. And so, but until we can actually speak again, my friend, I'm just going to say, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and God bless.